Hello and welcome to Leviathan News. Today is May 16th, and we have a very special guest, Mr. Brady Dale, who is the recent author of SBF, How the FTX Bankruptcy Unwound Crypto's Very Bad Good Guy. So welcome to Leviathan.
Hey, thanks for having me.
That's great. So I actually saw your book come out the other day. I saw you posting about it on Twitter, and I think this is like well needed at this point. So we're probably in what, the seventh inning right now of this whole story.
Oh yeah, well, it depends on what happens with the trial, and then if there's it could be I guess if there's like additional appeals or whatever, I guess maybe there'd be extra innings. But yeah, we're getting late in the story, but there's still some stuff to go for sure.
So what was the impetus behind the book, and when did you start doing your writing and research about it?
Well, it was Wiley's idea. So an editor at Wiley wanted to do the first book on SBF, and so sorry, I'm pausing my notifications here. I should have done that beforehand. So he my editor at Wiley wanted to do the first book, and he hit me up. He heard me say something funny on a podcast he thought would be good, like looked me up, asked me if I'd wanted to do it. And so it didn't start until the arrest. I wrote the book really fast. Fortunately, I had a piece of the book already written because I had already had the idea for a book that was related to a part of Sam's story, the Sushi Swap Uniswap saga. And so I had done a bunch of research on that. So that's just a few chapters in this book, but it was, at least that was some part that I didn't have, I had to reconfigure it a lot, but that part was kind of done. But yeah, fortunately I write pretty fast. So I was able to do it at the end of last year.
So when you started it, Sam Bankman-Fried was still going through his media's hero arc. And then did you have to rewrite a bunch of what you'd written to kind of capture the villain arc, or were you never on board with the hero narrative?
Well, by the time I started writing, I certainly wasn't on board with the hero narrative. As I say in the book, I didn't exactly think Sam was a hero, but I didn't think he was this irresponsible, and I talk about that in there. You'll see if you read it. So I didn't start, the project didn't come up until FTX had shut down. It started after that. So we knew all of that. And so, yeah, I was already thoroughly in understanding that Sam was, had a fall from grace. And the way the book opens, chapter 1 opens, I think I guess you would say the first line of the book is, I'm drowning in Sam. And that was from the time that was written on December 1st, when he was just everywhere, and it was exhausting, especially for someone who was trying to write about him and felt like I needed to listen to all these things, and yet it was the same thing over and over again. So it wasn't really that valuable.
So going back to the beginning, what did you learn that was interesting about kind of the earlier parts? Because Sam was still quite young, right? And he kind of came out of nowhere in 2020-ish, right? Apparently they had made millions of dollars from the kimchi trade that nobody had heard about, right? Just this kind of just appeared, right? And then went on to become one of the biggest players.
Yeah.
So what did you learn about that kind of early part of his
your audience is pretty crypto native, right? This is a pretty okay, cool. So yeah, so
very far down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think they'll appreciate this then. So to me, one of the craziest things about Sam's story is, to your point, he came into crypto the same time I did. I came in as a reporter, he came in as a trader, but he came in 2017. And what's notable about that for people who've been in crypto for a while is he had made money through 2018. Like, he knew how to play a bear market, right? And he understood a bear market. And for all of us who were around, what I find so confusing about Sam, but I also have my explanation for it. I don't know if if I'm right, but I do have my explanation for it. But is all of us who had been through 2018, one of the most annoying things people do on crypto Twitter as a boom is coming to an end. I did it too. And it's starting to look like the bear market is coming as we start acting like old wise men and telling the youths, these things are about to happen. It's time for you to start taking money out. Quit thinking. You got to think in a different framework now. It's different times are ahead. It's not going to work the same. But it's because we all know how this goes. When Bitcoin hits an all-time high and it starts to fall, it's time to get out. It's time to start thinking differently. It's time to maybe go back into savings accounts or whatever, or at least do something a little bit more conservative. Quit swinging for the fences. And most of the OGs know that, Sam knew it too. In fact, Sam had proven that he could make good money in a bear market. And yet Alameda seems to have clearly not done that. They seem to be one of the few OGs who didn't do that. They were still swinging for the fences, even after it seems like it went even more desperately after Bitcoin had fallen. And my theory on that, we won't know. We may find out in the trial or maybe not. But my theory on that is Sam really believed that he needed FTX to be the #1 marketplace in the world. And I think he maybe thought his only chance to do that was for Alameda to make a pile of money that they could use later on as the final days of the bull market were unwinding, because I think he believed there was still some big money to be made there. And so that's why they took those big swings. And I think that's what proved to be their unwinding. I think that it was that desire to overtake Binance that took them out. I don't really know, but that's what it seems like. Well, I'm just baffled that his operation behaved so crazily when they had seen this before and they should have known better.
Yeah, the thing that is just maddening to me is that all the people that were around Sam, you have like these big heavy hitters, like all the big names in the industry, both in TradFi and in the crypto scene as well too, like really big American funds. And we find out after the collapse that there's no internal controls. There's very poor record keeping. There's crazy, almost no recorded communications.
Yeah.
And, these are companies that have been giving billions of dollars to Sam. And I was just in shock for a long time. Like, how could we let our just way of ensuring investor safety, not even investor safety, but you have, if you're a large fund like 816Z or some of these other ones, and you're investing billions of dollars into FTX, like where's the controls?
Well, I mean, just not to be pedantic, I don't think anyone put billions in. They put hundreds of millions in, but it was a lot of money. But because they were valued at like 4 billion or something like that, right? So so it could have been billion. This part is less difficult to understand. This part is fairly easy to understand. When you're in a bull market, this happens every time in really wild bull markets. It happened in the .com bubble. It happens, goes way back. I don't know why VCs haven't found a way to fix this yet, but they haven't. When things get really wild, VCs get very competitive and their LPs are screaming at them to get into the hottest rounds. And the natural outgrowth of that is everyone starts lowering standards. It's as simple as that, and founders know it, and like, they're just like, you want to come in and meet my controller? Yeah, get the hell out. I got 40 VCs behind you with the same amounts of money who don't need to talk to my controller. So screw you. It's that simple. So that part is not at all hard to understand. This happens every time. He was the hottest thing in town. He could tell, he could say whatever he wanted.
Yeah, but there was almost like this messiah complex that was built up around him. I mean, I know there's that 15,000 word puff piece that was published, essentially like, it's almost like
the puff pieces. The puff pieces were by far the worst part of the story. Like, I could take the crypto scammers, but then after his fall from grace, when you kept getting the puff pieces, that's what really set me off.
He's talking about a different puff piece. He's talking about the one that Susquehanna, one of his biggest backers, wrote before the fall from grace. That was one of the most embarrassing things a VC firm has ever done.
Like word fellatio.
Yeah. I write about it a lot in the book. It's they took it off the site, but you can still find it on the Internet Archive. And I helpfully put the links to it in there, so you have to type it all in. But it's still there. That was really egregious and embarrassing, but it reflected this insane level of ass kissing that VCs have to do when markets get that crazy. I've said this before. I think VCs need to come up with some kind of like mutually assured common sense for that, because there will be other bull runs in this market or others, and they'll all be under this pressure, and they need some kind of system together to not let themselves go crazy like this, because they do it every time the economy gets really, really, really hot, and it will again someday.
So what about all of the political connections as well too? I know that like the SEC chair Gary Gensler worked with Sam's father. at Caroline's father at
I
MIT.
completely am. I don't give a rat's ass with the Gary Gensler thing. I think that's so overblown.
But
everyone's like, he had 2 meetings with Gary Gensler and his dad knew him. It's just like, so what? I mean,
I bring that up, but there's like $50 million that was donated from him, and then also, they were making all these like donations, right? Both to Democrats and Republicans.
That's significant. That is the electeds is significant. The Gary Gensler obsession, I'm just like, he never did anything. And like all signs point to a Biden administration that never had any intention of doing anything. People are like, well, Sam was trying to get this special carve out. Yeah, he didn't get it. We don't know what would have happened if his company hadn't blown up. But if I had a time machine, I'd be willing to bet, or like an alternate universe machine, that he was never going to get it. Now, the elected donations are significant, and that might have really meant something at some point. That's a whole other kettle of fish. We don't know. I mean, once you go to jail, it becomes very easy for electeds to stop returning your phone calls. So, but I do think he was setting up something significant in that way. We never got to see where it would go because his company fell apart. But the whole Gensler conspiracy theory, just like, come on, everyone. There is no smoke and there's no fire. Like, if I've had tons of people there's like a hot story for you to find here. And I'm like, okay, do you have even a shred of evidence for me to begin with? And no one does, other than like, he had like 3 meetings. It's just like Gensler has meetings with lots of people. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. So what are your predictions for the trial?
I'm sorry to be lame on this. I don't have a prediction. If this is really the first trial I've ever dealt with. And like, I've just been a crypto reporter doing crypto stuff. When I was at CoinDesk, whatever trials did come up, mostly like Nick and his crew would deal with it. So like, I just haven't been a big trial guy. And the more that I've dug into the law, the more I've realized that the law is one very weird and kludgy and clanky consensus layer that I can't predict where things will happen. Like it looks pretty bad for him, but like I learned about this rule of specialty thing that has to do with when someone's extra. There's all these just weird little quirks in the law that, like, I don't know, man.
Especially for white collar crime as well too. Like it's
yeah. I still think he wants trial. I think he wants to go to trial. So I think it'll go. That's wild in and of itself, that even if that happens, I guess that's as much prediction I'll make, because I think it'll go to trial. There we go. There's my big prediction.
So what did you think about the state of crypto journalism, either before and now after the collapse of FTX? Because obviously the entire journalism profession pretty much dropped the ball on this, right? By not doing enough, by essentially buying into the puff pieces, by letting themselves be taken by FTX's PR companies, selling the dream that FTX had, and not doing the background investigatory work into Sam and his companies and the many different shells they had and how everything was set up in Alameda. Do you think that in a post FTX world that crypto journalism is going to take a deep look at itself and try to fix some of these issues and rectify these biases that they've had for the next cycle?
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be like a defensive journalist or anything here, but I don't know. I don't really know what else we could have done. There were some puff stuff. I don't think it was entirely puff all the time. I mean, I think there were some critical things that were done. The truth is, with the way the world is set up, if somebody wants to run a centralized company and hide a bunch of stuff all over the world, they can do it, and like, even like I did my conversation with Anthony Pompliano as my first podcast for the book. And one of the things Pomp pointed out, I mean, he's a well-resourced guy who people have to answer his questions because they want his money. He's like, it's even tough for VCs. Like, we can ask them the questions and they give us the answers. But if like, we don't believe the answers, it's even tough for us to get, more facts out of them if people are good at hiding things. I mean, like, all these things we've learned about Sam and his various shell companies since then, we've only learned those things because he's going through a bankruptcy, and that opens the books up in a way that they aren't otherwise opened. I don't know now how I would have found out about all those weird companies. I don't know what could have done other than, and this is a thing that happens sometimes, but it's really tough to make happen, other than someone within the company getting nervous and just releasing some things to people, which there's not a journalist in the business who, if somebody within FTX had come to us with like, we've got a sheaf of files about how shady this company is, there's not a single outlet that I don't believe wouldn't have been happy to take those files, but nobody brought them to us, So, and that's one of those, getting a scoop like that is one of those career defining moments for a journalist, but also there's no real way to control making it happen. I mean, you can make it known you're interested, but that doesn't mean people will come to you. So, I do think people bought Sam's narrative more than they should have, but I would love to learn the lesson of where I should be looking for other companies that I'm not looking, but I didn't learn that from this story. I don't know what door I could have knocked on that I didn't knock on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because it was the balance sheet that really threw the floodgates open, right?
Yeah.
You had the balance sheet, and then within 2 weeks, FTX was dead.
One mistake I think I made, I will say, here's a thing I'll say that I could have done more on, that I learned from writing my own book, is I had heard people talking about Sam coins, and I just kind of, it wasn't that I dismissed it. It was just, it didn't strike me as interesting enough to pursue as a story. It was just like one of those things, that sort of like silly side things. It wasn't like I just didn't care, but I was just like, I don't know, Sam coins, whatever. But I do wish I had like, kind of been like, what are all the Sam coins, and done a story on like exploring the Sam coins and looked at them and like how big are they and how much is out there, because that was things that were public. There were real common themes between them. Once you like looked at them all in like one place, you're just like, these are pretty dumb, like that's a thing that I wish I would have. That's a thing that I will say for myself, like when people were making that narrative, I wish I'd dug into that. I don't know that would have changed. That was a thing that was out there in the world that like I could have done more on. And one of the more interesting for me parts of there's a lot of the book I knew the story all along. That was one part where I had to like buckle down and do research and like just research all the Sam coins, and that's in there. And that was somewhat enlightening for me. That might have been better if somebody had focused on that a little bit more. I don't know that it would have changed anything, but it would have been a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So outside just the purely journalistic space, as a broader crypto community, is there something that we can do to make sure that these scammers don't proliferate next cycle?
Well, that's okay. So that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, the crypto community could do a better job of this, but it's just like it's so hard. I mean, I guess one thing I would say is the more crypto OGs could just completely lose the word FUD from their vocabulary, the better off we'll all be. Because, like, I'll say, for example, one of my biggest journalistic successes that I've ever had, like one of the best stories I've ever done, was I wrote this giant expose about EOS several years ago. And, all the people who had already thought EOS was garbage loved it, of course, and it really blew up in that way. Everything that story reported on as a problem with EOS has proved to be more and more true over time. Like it really played itself out. But there was still just tons of people in the EOS community who were just like, oh, this FUD, just FUD, FUD, FUD. And everyone's learned this nonsensical term FUD that it's really problematic. Like the truth is journalists are going to say negative things about tokens that you like, and it's not going to feel great for you because you're going to feel like it's going to drive your token down a little bit, and you feel like it's not against you. But the truth is, a part of our role is to hold companies accountable, to raise questions, and the more folks can like push back against this narrative that like every time you hear something negative, that doesn't mean it's like FUD and that it's not useful, that would be really good. Because to me, like on the whole scam thing, I think a problem that I've had as a crypto journalist is like, I'm not a big scam chaser, and I don't spend a lot of time writing about scam stuff. And a part of that is a little bit my bias. To me, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time when things are scammy, it's like so obvious that they're scammy. I'm like, how does anyone even fall for this? But somehow like whatever sophistication that I have like is not widely propagated. And the next time there's a boom in crypto, a bunch of people who are naive are going to come in, and folks don't listen to me. They don't listen to me as a journalist because I'm a FUDster. They need actual OGs to be like trying to help people to be inoculated against scamminess, because there's always scamminess in a boom. I guess that's my big thought of what crypto needs to do.
Well, that's a good place to wrap up. We'll post the link for your book, SBF, How the Bankruptcy Unwound Crypto's Very Bad Good Guy. You can get a first edition.
It'll change your life. Everyone should read it. It'll change your life.
And you actually put a non great you know, the thing about one thing I always like thought was weird about Sam was like they always use like a specific picture, right? Like the way that he was portrayed, right? It was either like in his t-shirt, like crumbs on his thing, like his shirt disheveled, and now we have a picture of him on the book where this is obviously him going back and forth between prisons. So it's a good look, and hopefully he's there for a very, very long time. So Bady, thank you so much for coming on. We really enjoyed the chat.
Yeah, thank you for having me.